The sky was gray over the ruined colony. Broken towers leaned at odd angles, and dust moved like smoke between the empty streets. Once, this place had been full of life, but now it was only silence and shadows. Ryan, a human soldier, walked slowly through the rubble. His boots crunched on the ground as he scanned the ruins with his helmet visor. His orders were simple: check for any hidden threats, mark safe zones, and report back to camp. Yet as he walked, he could not stop thinking about how quiet the world was. Quiet in a way that felt unnatural, as if the land itself had given up. He paused near a collapsed building. The wind pushed loose metal against the stones, creating a hollow clang. For a moment, he thought that was all it was, just noise from the ruins. But then he heard it again. A sound that was not the wind. It was soft, almost lost under the broken noises of the colony. A thin, weak cry. Ryan froze. His training told him to be cautious. A sound could be a trap, something left behind by scavengers or enemy scouts. But there was something in the sound that reached past his caution. It was not sharp or threatening. It was small, broken, almost like the cry of a child. He moved carefully, rifle raised, stepping through fallen beams and cracked walls. The sound came again, shorter this time, almost fading into nothing. Ryan followed it, his breath slow, his senses sharp. Finally, near a shadowed corner of what had once been a food hall, he saw movement. At first, he thought it was a bundle of cloth. Then the bundle shifted, and he saw thin arms, a fragile frame, and eyes too large for the small face that looked up at him. It was a girl. Not human, but alien. Her skin was pale, almost silver in the dim light. She was thin, so thin that Ryan could see the shape of her bones under her skin. Her clothes were torn, nothing more than rags. She tried to push herself back against the wall when she saw him, but she was too weak. Her hands trembled. Her lips moved as if trying to form words, but no sound came out. Ryan lowered his weapon slowly. He knelt down, keeping his voice steady and calm. "Easy," he said. "I'm not here to hurt you." The girl stared at him with wide, frightened eyes. She looked no older than 8 or 9 in human years, though Ryan could not be sure how her species aged. What he did know was that she was starving. He had seen that look before, in war zones and broken cities, a life hanging by a thread. He reached into his pack and pulled out a ration bar. He tore the wrapper and placed it on the ground between them. Then he pushed it closer. For a moment, the girl did not move. Her eyes shifted from him to the food and back again. Then, with shaking hands, she reached forward and snatched it. She pulled it close, sniffed it, and then bit into it as if afraid it might disappear. Ryan watched in silence as she ate. She did not stop to breathe until half the bar was gone. Crumbs stuck to her lips. Her hands clutched the food so tightly that her knuckles turned white. "Slow down," Ryan said gently. "There's more if you need it." She glanced at him, eyes filled with suspicion, but she slowed. He could see tears forming, though she tried to hide them by lowering her head. Ryan felt something heavy settle in his chest. He had seen soldiers left behind, towns abandoned, but seeing any child abandoned like this was something different. She was not a threat. She was just small, hungry, and alone. He looked around the ruined hall. There were no signs of others. No family. No guardians. Just her. Whoever had lived here had left her behind. Ryan leaned back, pulling another ration from his pack. He held it out to her, but this time he did not place it on the ground. He kept it in his hand, extending it slowly. The girl hesitated. Her body tensed as if ready to run, though she had nowhere to go. Then, inch by inch, she stretched out her hand. Her fingers brushed his glove before snatching the food. It was a small thing, but to Ryan it felt like the first thread of trust. He studied her more closely now. Her face was thin but soft, her eyes large and dark. Her small frame was covered in bruises and dirt. She must have been alone for days, maybe longer. "What's your name?" Ryan asked. The girl stopped eating. She looked at him, her lips moving, but the sound she made was broken, unclear. She repeated it, but Ryan could not understand. It was a word in her own tongue, faint and fragile. He nodded anyway. "All right. We'll figure it out later." The girl pulled her knees to her chest, as if protecting herself. Yet she kept looking at him, as if she was trying to decide whether to believe he was real. Ryan sat down across from her. His orders were clear: secure the area, return to camp. But now, looking at her, he knew he could not just walk away. His radio crackled with a call from his unit, asking for a status report. Ryan hesitated. He should answer. He should say he found nothing. But his eyes stayed on the girl. "Not yet," he whispered to himself. He switched the radio off. For a long time, they sat in silence. The girl finished the food, her small hands holding the empty wrapper as if it still had meaning. Then, slowly, she leaned against the wall and closed her eyes. Ryan kept watch, rifle across his knees. The ruined colony stretched around them, empty and cold. But here, in this broken hall, there was life again. Fragile life, clinging on. Morning light crept over the ruins, turning the broken metal into lines of gold. Ryan woke with a stiff back, his rifle still resting across his knees. He had stayed awake most of the night, keeping watch for movement in the dead colony. When he looked toward the wall, the girl was still there. She was curled tightly, her thin arms wrapped around her knees. Her breathing was soft, but at least it was steady. Ryan let out a slow breath of relief. She had survived the night. He reached into his pack and pulled out a canteen. As he moved, her eyes flicked open. For a second, she looked ready to panic, but then she saw him and relaxed just slightly. "Here," Ryan said, holding out the water. She stared at it, unsure. He took a small sip himself, then offered it again. This time she reached forward. Her hands trembled as she drank, but she did not let go until the canteen was half empty. "Easy," Ryan said. "You'll make yourself sick if you drink too fast." The girl lowered the canteen, pressing it close to her chest like it was treasure. Ryan gave her a faint smile. He was not sure she understood his words, but she seemed to understand his tone. They sat in silence for a while. Ryan could hear the faint hum of distant machines, probably old drones still wandering the colony. He knew he needed to return to base, but the thought of leaving her here turned his stomach. He finally spoke. "You can't stay here. It's not safe. You'll come with me." The girl blinked at him. She tilted her head, as if trying to understand. Ryan pointed to himself. "Ryan." Then he pointed to her, waiting. She hesitated. Her lips moved, shaping a sound that was soft and strange. It came out broken, as if her throat was too weak. Ryan tried to repeat it, but it came out clumsy. She frowned, shook her head, and tried again. The second time, it was still hard for him to understand. The sound was like me, R.A. Myra? Ryan asked carefully. Her eyes widened a little. She nodded once. Ryan gave a small nod back. Myra. All right. The name felt right. Short, gentle, and easy on his tongue. Myra. She looked at him with a quiet expression, and for the first time, Ryan thought he saw something like hope in her eyes. He reached into his pack again and gave her another ration bar. She took it without fear this time, eating more slowly as if she trusted he would not take it back. As she ate, Ryan looked around the ruins. His orders said nothing about bringing back survivors of another species. His commanders would not like it. To them, she was not their problem. But to him, leaving her here would be the same as pulling the trigger himself. He stood up and adjusted the strap of his rifle. Come on, Myra, he said. He held out his hand. She looked at it, uncertain. Her large eyes shifted from his face to his glove. Slowly, she placed her small hand in his. Her skin was cool, almost fragile, but the grip was firm. Together, they stepped out of the broken hall. The streets were silent. Burnt vehicles lay across cracked roads. Ryan guided her carefully, scanning every shadow for danger. She stayed close, holding his hand tightly as if she feared he might vanish. When they reached the path toward camp, Myra's steps slowed. She looked back at the ruins, her face unreadable. Then she looked up at Ryan, and he gave a reassuring nod. Don't worry, he said softly. You're safe now. It took longer than usual to reach the human outpost. The camp stood inside a wall of steel panels and defense turrets, a temporary base set up while they studied the colony. Soldiers at the gate noticed Ryan approaching. At first, they relaxed when they saw him, but their eyes quickly fixed on Myra. What's that? One soldier asked, pointing. Ryan's jaw tightened. She's with me. The man frowned. That's not human. She's a child, Ryan replied sharply. She was left behind. She's coming inside. The guard looked uncertain, but he did not stop Ryan. Once inside, whispers spread quickly. Soldiers glanced at Myra, some with confusion, others with disapproval. Myra lowered her head, gripping Ryan's hand even tighter. He led her to his quarters, a small metal room with a bed, a desk, and storage crates. Myra stood just inside the doorway, her eyes wide. She had likely never seen human living quarters before. It's not much, Ryan said, setting his rifle aside, but it's safe. She wandered slowly, touching the edge of the bed, the surface of the desk. Then she sat down on the floor, hugging her knees. Ryan sighed and sat beside her. You don't need to be afraid. No one's going to hurt you. She looked at him. For the first time, she tried to copy one of his words. Her lips moved, and a quiet sound came out. Safe. Ryan blinked in surprise. A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. That's right. Safe. Myra gave the smallest smile, then rested her head against the wall. Days passed. Myra stayed close to Ryan, following him almost everywhere. When other soldiers tried to speak to her, she hid behind him. Some mocked Ryan for babysitting an alien, but others began to soften when they saw how devoted Myra was to him. Ryan taught her simple words: water, food, friend. She learned quickly, repeating them in her soft, careful voice. At night, she would sit near him and listen as he told her short stories about Earth, the green forests, the wide oceans, the stars seen from the mountains. She did not understand every word, but she listened with shining eyes. One evening, after he finished telling her about the rain on Earth, she reached for his hand again. Her small fingers curled around his. Ryan squeezed gently. He had promised himself once that he would never get too attached in war zones. But as he looked at Myra, thin and fragile yet still fighting to live, he knew that promise was broken. She was no longer just a survivor he found. She was his responsibility. And deep down, he felt something more. Myra was not only learning from him. She was reminding him of something he had nearly forgotten, what it truly meant to be human. The camp was never quiet. Soldiers moved in and out, engines hummed, and radios buzzed with constant reports. Yet inside Ryan's quarters, there was a different kind of silence. Myra sat on the floor near his desk, carefully stacking empty ration boxes into a small tower. Her thin fingers worked slowly, her face calm. Ryan watched her as he cleaned his rifle. He had seen her grow stronger each day. Her cheeks had filled out slightly, her eyes had more life, and she no longer shook with every step. But he also knew her safety here was fragile. Too many eyes had noticed her, and too many questions were spreading. That morning, the door opened with a sharp hiss. Two officers stepped inside without knocking. One was Captain Darren, tall, broad, and stern. The other was Lieutenant Farrell, his face lined with suspicion. Ryan stood up quickly. Myra froze, clutching her little tower of boxes. "Sergeant Ryan," Captain Darren said, his voice firm. "We need to speak." Ryan's eyes narrowed. "About what, sir?" The captain's gaze shifted to Myra. "About that." Myra's arms wrapped around the boxes as if they could shield her. She lowered her head, her dark eyes filled with fear. "She's a child," Ryan said, his tone steady. "She is not human," Farrell replied sharply. "She does not belong here. This camp is for soldiers, not strays." Ryan clenched his fists. She was abandoned in the ruins. Left to starve. Would you have me walk past her and pretend I didn't see? That is exactly what you should have done, Farrell snapped. Our orders are to secure this world, not to adopt whatever creatures we find crawling through the rubble. Captain Darren raised a hand, silencing the argument. His voice was calm but firm. "Regulations are clear, Ryan. Non-human dependents are not permitted within military grounds. This child cannot stay here." Myra looked up at Ryan with wide, frightened eyes. She could not understand every word, but she understood enough. She pressed closer to him, as if asking for protection. Ryan placed a hand on her shoulder. "She is no threat. She's learning our words, she understands us. She just needs food, shelter, and safety. That is not too much to give." Farrell scoffed. "And what happens when she grows older? What if her kind returns and finds we are keeping one of their young? What if she carries some sickness we cannot see?" "She's been with me for days," Ryan replied coldly. "If there was sickness, I would already be dead." The tension thickened. Captain Darren studied Ryan for a long moment, then shook his head. "This is not about compassion, Sergeant. This is about discipline. A soldier who ignores orders endangers everyone. You will hand her over. She will be removed from this camp by nightfall." Ryan felt the words like a weight on his chest. Removed. He knew what that meant. They would leave her outside the gates, alone again. The same fate he had saved her from. "No," he said firmly. Farrell stepped forward. "That is not your choice." "It is," Ryan growled. "Because I will not let her be abandoned again." The room went silent. Myra clung to Ryan's arm, trembling. Captain Darren's expression hardened. "You are walking a dangerous line, Sergeant. Think carefully about what you are saying." "I have thought about it," Ryan replied. "If being human means leaving children to die because of rules on paper, then maybe we have already lost what makes us worth fighting for." The captain's jaw tightened. For a moment, it looked like he would order Ryan's arrest on the spot. But instead, he turned sharply toward the door. "You have until sundown," he said coldly. "After that, she will be removed whether you agree or not." The two officers left, the door slamming shut behind them. Ryan stood in silence, breathing hard. His hands shook with anger, but when he looked down at Myra, his expression softened. She was staring at him, her small fingers gripping his sleeve. "They want me gone," she whispered in broken words. Ryan knelt in front of her. "I won't let that happen, Myra. I promise." Her lips trembled, and tears filled her eyes. But she nodded slowly, trusting him. That evening, whispers spread across the camp like fire. Soldiers spoke of how Sergeant Ryan had defied the captain. Some mocked him, saying he was foolish to risk his career for an alien. Others, however, felt something different. They had seen Myra's fragile smile, her attempts to speak human words, her way of staying close to Ryan like a shadow. She was not a threat. She was a reminder of what they had once been before war hardened them. A few soldiers came quietly to Ryan's quarters. One brought extra food. Another handed over a blanket. None spoke loudly, but their actions said enough. Not everyone agreed with the order. That night, as the sun dipped low and the camp lights flickered on, Ryan sat with Myra. She leaned against him, wrapped in the blanket, her eyes heavy with sleep. "They'll come soon," she whispered. Her voice was stronger now, though still soft. "Yes," Ryan admitted. "But we'll be ready." She looked up at him. "You, stay." "Always," Ryan said without hesitation. Her eyes closed, and for the first time since he had found her, she fell asleep without fear. Ryan kept watch, knowing what the next day would bring. He was no longer just a soldier following orders. He was the guardian of a child that no one else wanted. The night was heavy with silence. The camp lights glowed faintly, casting long shadows across the steel walls. Ryan sat on the edge of his bed, listening. He could hear the hum of generators, the clank of boots from guards on patrol, and beyond that, the steady breathing of Myra as she slept beside the desk, wrapped in a blanket. He knew the hour was close. Captain Darren had given his word, by sundown Myra would be removed. But the captain had not yet acted, which meant the order could come at any moment. Ryan could not risk waiting. He stood and checked his gear. Rifle, sidearm, rations, canteen. Enough for travel, but not for long. He looked at Myra. She was still asleep, her thin frame small under the blanket. For a moment, he wished he could keep her here, safe inside the walls. But he knew better. The camp was no longer safe for her. Ryan crouched down and touched her shoulder gently. "Myra," he whispered. Her eyes opened slowly. When she saw his face, she sat up without fear. "They come?" she asked softly. Soon, Ryan said. "We need to go." Myra nodded. She did not argue. She trusted him completely. He helped her to her feet, wrapped the blanket around her like a cloak, and opened the door just a crack. The corridor outside was empty. Ryan guided her quietly through the narrow halls, moving like a shadow. Every sound mattered: the creak of boots, the hiss of air vents, the buzz of lights. When they reached the outer gate, 2 guards stood watch. Ryan pulled Myra behind a storage crate and waited. The guards spoke to each other, laughing about something, their weapons slung carelessly. Ryan felt his heart pound. He had no wish to fight his own people, but if they stopped him, he would not hesitate to protect Myra. He waited until the guards moved a few steps apart. Then he slipped from cover, Myra close behind. They moved swiftly toward a maintenance hatch built into the wall. Ryan had used it once during a patrol shift. It opened to the ground outside. He knelt, forcing the latch open with careful pressure, and the hatch slid wide enough for them to crawl through. The night air outside was colder than the camp. Myra shivered, clutching the blanket tighter. Ryan closed the hatch softly and led her into the ruins beyond the walls. They walked through broken streets, guided only by starlight. The camp lights faded behind them until they were only a faint glow in the distance. Myra's steps were quiet but steady. She kept her small hand locked around Ryan's glove, refusing to let go. Hours passed. They moved past collapsed towers and twisted metal. Ryan knew patrol drones scanned the colony, so he kept them close to shadows. Twice he pulled Myra into cover as machines buzzed overhead, their lights cutting across the ground. Each time, she pressed close to him, silent and still until the danger passed. At last, they reached a section of the ruins Ryan had scouted before, a cluster of half-fallen buildings that offered cover and places to rest. He led Myra into one that still had part of a roof. Inside, dust floated in thin shafts of moonlight. Broken tables and chairs lay scattered across the floor. "This will do for tonight," Ryan said quietly. Myra sank onto a piece of stone, pulling the blanket tighter around her. Her face was pale, but her eyes still watched him carefully. "Are we safe?" she asked. "For now," Ryan replied. He handed her a ration bar and water. "Eat. We'll move again tomorrow." She ate slowly, no longer rushing like when he first found her. After a moment, she looked up. "You leave camp, for me?" Ryan sat down beside her. "Yes. I could not let them take you away." "Punish you," Myra whispered. "Hurt you?" Ryan shook his head. "That doesn't matter. What matters is you're safe." For a moment, her eyes filled with tears. She pressed the blanket to her face and whispered, "You stay. You protect." "I promised," Ryan said softly. The building groaned in the wind, its walls shifting. Ryan stood and checked the perimeter, scanning with his visor for any movement. Nothing stirred except the dust. Still, he kept his weapon close as he returned to Myra. As the night deepened, she leaned against him, her small frame warm beside his armor. She fell asleep quickly, her breathing soft and even. Ryan did not sleep. His mind turned over what lay ahead. The camp would soon notice his absence. They would send search parties. And if command learned he had taken Myra, they would brand him a deserter. But none of that changed his decision. He had chosen her safety over orders, and he would not go back on that choice. Near dawn, a faint rumble shook the ground. Ryan tensed, gripping his rifle. Myra stirred but did not wake fully. He crept to the broken wall and looked out. In the distance, one of the camp's patrol transports moved across the ruins, searchlights sweeping. They were looking for him already. He returned to Myra and touched her shoulder. "Wake up. We need to move." She opened her eyes, still heavy with sleep, but she nodded without complaint. Together, they stepped into the pale morning light. The city stretched out before them, ruined, dangerous, but full of places to hide. Somewhere in these ruins, there had to be shelter strong enough to keep them safe. As they walked, Myra slipped her hand into his again. Her voice was small but steady. "We run. Together." Ryan looked down at her and gave a firm nod. Together. He did not know how long they could evade the soldiers. He did not know what dangers still waited in the broken colony. But he knew one thing with certainty: Myra would not be abandoned again. Not while he lived. The ruins stretched endlessly, broken towers reaching like jagged fingers toward the pale sky. Ryan and Myra moved carefully through the silent streets, keeping close to the shadows. The distant sound of patrol engines drifted through the air, a reminder that the human camp was searching. By midday, they reached an area of the city Ryan had never explored. Massive stone arches rose above the rubble, carved with symbols that shimmered faintly even under layers of dust. The place felt different, older than the colony buildings, as if it had been here long before humans arrived. Myra slowed as they approached. Her hand slipped from Ryan's glove, and she walked ahead on her own. Her dark eyes widened, her steps quickening. "Myra," Ryan called softly, "stay close." But she was already moving toward one of the arches. Her small fingers brushed across the glowing carvings. The symbols pulsed brighter at her touch, sending waves of pale light along the stone. Ryan froze. What in the world? The ground trembled, not violently but like a deep breath drawn by the earth itself. The arches lit up, and a hidden doorway slid open between two pillars. Dust poured down as the stone moved aside, revealing a chamber beyond. Myra turned back to Ryan, her face shining with wonder. "Home," she whispered. Ryan's chest tightened. "You've seen this before." She shook her head slowly. "Not see. Not here. But, feel." She placed her hand over her heart. "It call me." Ryan hesitated, rifle raised as he scanned the area. No patrols nearby. No drones. Only silence and the soft glow of the ancient doorway. Finally, he lowered the weapon and nodded. "All right. Let's take a look." Inside, the chamber stretched wide, walls covered in more glowing symbols. Strange machines lined the edges, long dormant but humming faintly as Myra stepped closer. The air felt heavy, filled with a deep energy. Myra moved from one machine to another, her hands brushing across smooth surfaces. Each time she touched them, the lights flared brighter. Ryan followed, uneasy. "What is this place?" Myra paused in front of a tall pillar covered in carvings. She closed her eyes, resting her forehead against it. Then she spoke in broken words. "My people live here, long ago. Before colony. Before war." Ryan frowned. "You mean your kind built this city?" She shook her head. "Not city. More. This place, older. Keeper place. Memory place." Ryan studied the walls again. The carvings did not look like the colony architecture. They looked far older, as if they had been carved when humans were still bound to Earth. He felt a chill run down his spine. "Why was it hidden?" he asked. Myra's eyes darkened. She sat down on the floor, hugging her knees. My people, different. Some strong, some weak. I, weak. They say I wrong. Say I not belong. They leave me. Her voice cracked on the last words. Ryan knelt in front of her. You are not wrong, Myra. You're alive. That's what matters. She looked at him, tears shining in her eyes. You stay. They leave. Ryan placed a hand gently on her shoulder. Yes. I stay. For a long moment, they sat in silence. The machines hummed softly around them. Then one of the walls shifted, revealing a large circular table in the center of the chamber. Lights formed above it, swirling into shapes. Ryan stood quickly, weapon ready, but Myra stepped forward without fear. The lights shaped into a map of stars. Dozens of systems glowed, connected by lines of energy. At the center was a symbol that pulsed like a heartbeat. Myra reached out, and the map expanded, showing images of her people. They stood beside humans, working together on great structures that floated in space. Ryan's eyes widened. Humans and your kind, together. Myra nodded slowly. Long time ago. Before memory. Before war. We were friends. Ryan stared at the glowing images. His people had no record of this. If it were true, it meant their history was incomplete. Forgotten. Or perhaps erased. But before he could ask more, the sound of engines rumbled above. Searchlights cut through the cracks in the roof. Ryan cursed under his breath. They found us. Myra's eyes widened with fear. She looked at the glowing map, then back at Ryan. We hide. Ryan shook his head. Not here. They'll scan this place. We need to move. He grabbed his gear and guided her toward the doorway. But before they left, Myra placed her hand on the glowing table. The central star symbol pulsed once, brighter than before, sending a faint beam of light upward into the sky. Ryan pulled her hand away. What did you do? Myra's voice was quiet, almost trembling. Wake it. Call. Call who? Ryan demanded. She shook her head. Not no. But it answer me. Above, the engines grew louder. Drones swept across the ruins, scanning with sharp beams. Ryan pulled Myra into cover as one passed overhead. Myra, he whispered urgently, listen to me. Whatever this place is, whatever you did, it changes everything. Your people abandoned you, but this shows you're important. More important than even they knew. She looked up at him, frightened but steady. I different. You're not wrong, Ryan said firmly. You're special. Her small hand slipped into his again. We run. Together. Ryan nodded, heart pounding as the drones circled closer. Together. The glowing doorway behind them closed, sealing the chamber once more. The ruins above shook with the roar of search engines, but Ryan and Myra slipped away into the shadows, carrying with them a secret that could change the fate of more than just one child. The ruins were quiet again, but the calm was only temporary. Ryan and Myra moved quickly through broken streets, keeping close to walls and shadows. Patrol drones hummed overhead, scanning every corner, while distant engines warned them that human command would not give up easily. Myra walked beside Ryan, her small hand gripping his tightly. Her eyes were bright, reflecting both fear and determination. They follow, she whispered. Yes, Ryan replied. But we are faster. And we know the ruins better. They reached a small alley between two collapsed towers. Ryan crouched, pressing Myra against the wall. Above, a drone passed slowly, its searchlight sweeping across the rubble. Myra's body tensed, but Ryan kept his hand on her shoulder, a silent reassurance. After the drone passed, Ryan whispered, "We need to decide our next move. Staying in the ruins is temporary. Soon, they will widen the search. We cannot hide forever." Myra nodded. Her gaze drifted toward the horizon, where the glowing symbol of the ancient chamber still pulsed faintly in the distance. "Go, call," she asked softly. Ryan frowned. "Call? You mean the light from the chamber?" She nodded. They come. Maybe help." Ryan looked down at her. "You mean your people?" Myra shook her head. "Not people. Memory. Power. Awake." She pressed her small hand to her chest. "I choose." Ryan realized she was speaking of the energy she had awakened in the ancient chamber. The dormant technology had responded to her presence. Somehow, Myra was capable of more than either of them had understood. "Then we have a choice," Ryan said. "We can try to run forever, always hiding. Or we can face them. Show them that you are not a threat, that you belong, that what you are, is something important." Myra's eyes widened. "Face them." "Yes," Ryan said firmly. "It is dangerous. You might be taken, or worse. But hiding does not solve anything. You are stronger than they think. You are not the weak one they abandoned. You are something they have never seen before." Myra looked up at him, small fingers gripping his glove. Her voice trembled but was steady. "I try. With you." Ryan nodded. "Then we do it together." They moved carefully through the ruins toward the edge of the colony. The first sign of human soldiers appeared as small figures on the horizon. Their uniforms were sharp, their movements practiced. Patrols spread in a line, scanning for heat signatures and movement. Ryan led Myra to a cluster of broken walls that offered cover. He scanned the patrols, calculating their path. He whispered instructions to Myra, keeping her calm. "Stay low. Follow me exactly. Do not speak unless I tell you." Myra obeyed, moving silently beside him. Her small body was nimble, weaving through rubble and debris. Ryan could see the fear in her eyes, but also a growing determination. She had survived this long, learned human words, and awakened ancient technology. She was no longer just a child in need of protection, she was a symbol of something far greater. Suddenly, a patrol drone turned sharply toward them. Its lights cut across the alley. Ryan pressed Myra against the wall, shielding her with his body. The drone's sensors swept past them, narrowly missing. "Good," he whispered. "Keep moving." They reached an old communication tower, half collapsed but sturdy enough for shelter. Ryan lifted Myra up and helped her climb inside. From there, they could see the approaching patrols, moving carefully through the ruins. Ryan crouched beside her. "We cannot fight them. Not yet. But we can show them what you are capable of. You ready?" Myra nodded. Her small hand went to the faint glow beneath her skin, the energy that had awakened in the chamber. She concentrated, sending pulses of light into the sky. The glow formed a symbol above them, bright enough to be seen for miles. Ryan's eyes widened. "That will get their attention, for sure." Myra's voice was firm. "Yes. I choose. They see. They know." Above, patrols halted, their heads turning toward the symbol. The soldiers looked to each other, confused. None had seen anything like this before. Ryan lowered himself beside Myra. "You are ready for this?" "Together." As the patrols approached, Myra's light pulsed brighter. She reached out instinctively, touching the ground. The ruins responded, activating ancient mechanisms hidden beneath the stones. A low hum vibrated through the ground, causing the approaching soldiers to pause. Ryan stood slowly, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "We are not here to fight. She is a child. But she is special. You need to see the truth." Captain Darren and Lieutenant Farrell emerged from the patrol line, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and anger. "Sergeant Ryan!" Darren shouted. "What are you doing?" Ryan did not flinch. "I am protecting her. She was abandoned. She is not a threat. She is the key to something you do not understand yet." Farrell stepped forward, weapon raised, but Myra's glow intensified. The air seemed to hum with energy, creating a barrier that neither soldier could pass. Their eyes widened as the ruins themselves seemed to respond to her presence. Myra stepped forward, tiny but confident. "See. I belong. Not weak. Not wrong." Ryan's heart swelled. She had chosen this. She had chosen to stand, to show the truth of who she was. Captain Darren lowered his weapon slightly, studying her. This is impossible." "I do not care if it is impossible," Ryan said. "She is alive, and she has a power you do not understand. Stop trying to take her. Let her choose." The soldiers around them were silent, unsure what to do. Myra's energy continued to pulse, illuminating the ruins and sending a clear signal that something ancient had awakened. Finally, Darren spoke, his voice quieter, almost reverent. "Perhaps, she is what we have been blind to all along." Myra looked at Ryan, a small smile forming. "We, together." Ryan nodded. "Together." For the first time since he had found her, Ryan felt hope instead of fear. They had faced impossible odds, and now, Myra's choice had forced everyone to see her as she truly was. Not abandoned, not weak, but strong. The ruins glowed under Myra's light, casting strange shadows across the broken buildings. Ryan stood beside her, keeping one hand on her shoulder, steady and calm. Patrols from the human camp had stopped at the edge of the ruins. The soldiers were cautious now, watching the strange phenomenon, unsure how to respond. Captain Darren stepped forward from the line, his face serious but less harsh than before. He studied Myra, then looked at Ryan. "This energy. It is unlike anything we have seen. Perhaps your claims were true, Sergeant. Perhaps this child is not to be treated as a threat." Ryan nodded. "She is not a threat. She is the key to understanding, not just for her people, but for us as well." Myra raised her small hand, and the glowing energy pulsed once, soft and steady. It moved through the ruins, activating ancient symbols etched in stone. Images appeared above the ground, like holograms. They showed humans and Myra's people working together long ago, building cities in space, traveling to other worlds, sharing knowledge. The soldiers gasped. Some whispered among themselves. They had been taught that Myra's kind had no connection to humans, that they were different and separate. Yet here was proof, glowing in the ruins, undeniable. Myra's voice was soft but clear. "We, friends. We, help each other. I, remember. I choose. Together. Ryan smiled down at her. She had grown so much since he found her. She was no longer trembling or hiding. Her voice was confident, her eyes bright. She stood tall despite her small size. Captain Darren stepped closer. I see now. You are not a weakling abandoned by your people. You are the bridge. You are what we need to remember. Myra nodded, then turned to Ryan. We, safe. Yes, Ryan said. You are safe. I will never leave you again. Some soldiers lowered their weapons, realizing that Ryan had been right all along. Myra's presence was not a threat. It was a gift. A chance to reconnect humanity with something they had lost. News of Myra's awakening spread quickly. The glowing symbol she had created sent signals across the galaxy, reaching both human and alien worlds. Soon, ships arrived, cautious but curious. Representatives of her people came first, drawn by the beacon she had activated. They looked upon her, stunned that she had survived alone and that she had awakened the ancient energy of the chamber. Ryan stayed beside her, silent but proud. He watched Myra greet her people, their expressions softening as they saw her small, determined form. She was different from what they had expected. She was strong, resilient, and full of life. One of the elders stepped forward, speaking in Myra's tongue. She responded with perfect clarity, her voice confident and steady. The elder nodded, tears in their eyes. They had abandoned her once, but now they saw her not as weak, but as a leader. Ryan felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned to see Captain Darren, his face calmer than ever before. You were right, Sergeant. About her, about humanity, about compassion. Sometimes being human is not about following orders. It is about standing for what is right, even when it is dangerous. Ryan nodded. Thank you, sir. That means a lot. Myra looked up at him and smiled. We, together. Always. Yes, Ryan said. Always. The humans and Myra's people worked together to repair parts of the colony. The ruins were no longer just broken stones, they became a place of learning and cooperation. Myra guided both humans and her own kind, showing them the forgotten knowledge hidden in the ancient structures. For Ryan, the days became filled with purpose. He trained with Myra and her people, learning about the technologies of the past. He saw her teaching humans to understand symbols and machines that had been dormant for centuries. She was not just a child, she was a teacher, a guide, a symbol of hope. One evening, as the sun set over the repaired towers, Ryan sat beside Myra on a quiet balcony. She leaned against him, her small body warm and calm. Do they forgive? Myra asked softly, referring to the people who had abandoned her long ago. They see you now, Ryan said. That is more important than forgiveness. You have shown them who you really are. That is enough. Myra nodded, her eyes reflecting the last light of the sun. We change. Together. Yes, Ryan said firmly. Together. The galaxy took notice of Myra's awakening. Reports spread of a human soldier who had defied orders to protect a child, and of a child who had united species thought to be separate. Myra's story became a symbol of hope across worlds. Children of both humans and her kind began learning from her. They explored the ancient ruins, studied the glowing symbols, and listened to the lessons of cooperation and compassion. Myra's light was no longer just a beacon in the ruins, it became a symbol of unity. Ryan watched from a distance as Myra laughed with a group of young learners, guiding them with gentle patience. He realized how far they had come together. From the moment he found her starving and alone, to this day when she stood as a bridge between species, she had grown stronger, braver, and wiser than anyone could have imagined. The galaxy was different now. Humans had learned that compassion and courage could achieve more than fear and orders. Myra's people had learned that even the weakest among them could be a force for change. And for Ryan, he had learned that protecting someone who cannot protect themselves is one of the most human things a person can do. As night fell, Myra turned to Ryan, her eyes shining. "We keep going." Ryan smiled. "Always. We keep going. Together." And so, under the stars of a repaired and growing colony, the small alien girl and the human soldier walked forward, side by side. Their journey had begun with survival, grown through trust, and ended with a legacy that would last far longer than anyone had expected. They were a reminder to all, sometimes being human is not just about strength or skill. It is about courage, compassion, and the refusal to abandon those in need. The galaxy would remember that lesson for generations, carried by the light of a child who had been abandoned but never truly alone.